Hello and welcome to another update video about Bitcoin. Bitcoin currently back above 48k. It's not yet updated on CoinMarketCap, but we can already see it here on Bitstamp, on Binance, on Coinbase. Prices are going above 48k, and we're going to take a look at that now. Continues to be a good time for the crypto market. Prices are going up, but as you know, I now see this only as a bit of a relief rally, a recovery rally before we get the final dump. So where are we here on the Bitcoin chart? We are still here in this overall correction. Someone asked me, can we actually still call this a correction because it's been lasting quite long? Yes, there are corrections that can take years. This one here has nearly taken a year now, started basically here in April. After that, back then all-time high, we came down in a wave A, we moved up in a wave B. This was an overshooting wave B. Yeah, as I always say, a wave B can be very tricky, can be very difficult. People burn their fingers in a wave B because it's very difficult to trade as well, and very difficult to predict because a wave B can be shorter and a wave B can also be longer and even go above the previous all-time high, and therefore a lot of people expected end of last year for the price to do a 100k or whatever. So obviously since then we've been talking about this correction here, and we have come down nearly into the target area here in yellow. This is between 20 and 29k. It has to be lower than the wave A low, which was here at 28.7k back in June. So that is where the target area starts, goes down to around 20k. This is around about where the 200-week moving average is, and Bitcoin rarely went below the 200-week moving average in its history, and therefore I chose this target area. It would be very much in line also with a very common pattern in the Elliott Wave patterns, yeah, which is the expanded flat, where you make this wave A, you come up in a wave B, which is overshooting the previous high, and then you come down, but you need to go lower than the previous low. Of course, it is possible that we've seen the low, but this is only a very, very low probability, because this would be a so-called running flat pattern then. And the running flat pattern is really, really extremely rare. We can't write it off completely, but first of all, the structure doesn't look like it. Yeah, we haven't had a significant low. You're looking at something really significant from where we do a rocket start. That's one point. And also, yeah, again, in such a higher level wave count and a higher level correction that we are in, a running flat is just not typical. Yeah, therefore what we do expect here, what I expect, is an expanded flat. In that expanded flat we need to come lower than the wave A. Now what are we doing here currently? We have obviously done our first 5 waves to the downside. Now the alternative, so this is currently, Bitcoin has obviously decided, or the bulls and the bears have decided where Bitcoin is going to go in the next few weeks, which will be higher. Yeah, so you know, we had this primary scenario on the chart where the assumption was that because we are in a correction, we have the primary scenario that Bitcoin is going to break to the downside of that triangle that would have completed the correction, and we could have then nicely moved all the way to all-time highs. That would have completed that nice expanded flat correction. Everything good. Now Bitcoin decided again to do it a little bit different. However, this was the secondary scenario that we had on the charts, which is pretty much what is playing out at the moment. I've been warning about that, or I've been highlighting that alternative scenario for weeks now, and this is now playing out, in my opinion, as we broke above that critical resistance level at 45.8k. Bitcoin is now moving higher, and it broke out to the upside of that triangle. And that means that we can go and see now prices in the region between 55 and 65k in a wave B before we come down in a wave C. Interestingly, or funny enough, that is exactly the pattern that we talked about back originally when Bitcoin started the correction end of November or early December. You might remember it if you've been with me for a long time. Then this was exactly what I expected here. So when we came down here originally, down to on the 4th of December, that was at around 42.3k. That was the low back then. I did show you that was my primary scenario back then, that we were coming down here, and that I would expect now a year-end rally that could go to 55k, 55 to 63k. That is what I expected back then. That would have been exactly this pattern that is playing out now. A wave A down, a wave B up into this region based on these Fibonacci levels that I'm looking at again now. but the prices have shifted a little bit because the Fibonacci levels are now extended, because I'm not measuring to the 42k low. No, I'm now measuring to the 33k low. So they have shifted a little bit, but this was exactly the area, that year-end rally that never really happened. I showed you back then the alternative scenario that would have been exactly what played out then. That was the alternative, which was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in which we are not coming up in a wave, or in which we did not coming up in a wave B. The wave B would have allowed higher prices. That was that relief rally that I expected end of the year. Now that didn't play out. So basically back then the secondary scenario played out as well, which was an immediate sell-off instead of first going up and then down. Now it was good that I never really threw that back then primary scenario out of the window, because this had become then the secondary scenario, which we are now seeing playing out. So actually it has all worked out in the end, but it took a little bit longer to play out. So we now have this wave A down in a 5-wave move. We now come up in this B wave, and then the C wave will be down there. So the first major resistance that we are now going to see is that 51k level. That is one of the Fibonacci levels. Then 55, and then 61, and then 65k. These are the Fibonacci levels which will provide the resistance in this move up, and 51k would be the minimum that I do expect, but most likely between 55 and 61k, where I would then expect the turnaround, so that we can finally finish off that expanded flat pattern. All right, where are we now? We're now back above 48k, but we are still below the 200-day moving average, and that is the level that I'm watching out for now. You can see how Bitcoin came up. Bitcoin now overbought on the daily, on the RSI. Can it really go through here straight away, through that 200-day moving average and that yellow ascending trend line or not? That is the question now. I can't answer that for you. We will need to see, but overall what is fact is that Bitcoin, as it broke out above out of 45.8k, it now has scope for further upside. Of course, a short-term retracement is now always possible, because we did move up quite strongly in a corrective move up. Also, you could even see this a little bit as a channel here. So yeah, you could get a bit of a rejection, but this is now the primary scenario. What is interesting to see now is, while the MACD is continuing to go up and has come up quite a bit on the daily here, the RSI is now overbought. So I think this is where we are going to see here a correction fairly soon, and this is again where it's very interesting. It will be very interesting how the price is then going to react to that, because on the daily you're now getting into the overbought range. On the 2-day chart, not yet, but also here you're getting close to being overbought. So you're at 62, 63 already. But then we've got the very meaningful and important 4-day chart, and been telling you over the last few weeks that on the 4-day chart, when you see that MACD bullish crossover, you see here the momentum indicator down there shift bullish. That is what can push the price further up, and that is exactly what happened. But the question is now, when the daily is turning a little bit bearish again by being overbought, so that high RSI on the daily needs to be reduced down again, will this already be enough to change the trend to the downside again? And that could, for example, happen at around 51k already, but I would say probably more likely around 55 to 61k. Yeah, so I personally would not take any profits around 51k. That would not be attractive enough for me, but it will be an interesting and very important resistance level. The 51k level is also that previous wave 4 high. Yeah, so it will be very interesting on the daily to see, when you see the daily turn bearish again, will that have an effect on the 4-day chart here as well? And will that be enough to move the MACD down again? Yeah, there is still further upside on the 4-day chart possible, but as I said, I think, again, as so often we've seen it in the past, we're probably going to see the decision here on the daily RSI, and that is really an interesting one here, how the market is now going to react to that overbought daily RSI, and how that will then affect the price, because you are now getting overbought on the daily. So while there is more scope for further upside now, as we broke above that 45.8k level, we are not too far away from that first major resistance at 51k. I mean, I could even extend that target area down, because 51k is the first one that we're going to address. but it's just a huge target area then. So I left it at the most likely one between 55 and 65k. But really within here, 55 and 61k are the levels that I'm watching out for. So yeah, very interesting now. Bitcoin currently at this tipping point here, just below the 200-day moving average. I think if we see that break, then you're going to see some more significant upside. Yeah. And I mean, this could all play out very quickly. I mean, if we see how fast Bitcoin now moved up here, broke that level, if it breaks that 200-day moving average, it could move very quickly to the 51k, maybe even to the 55k, and could then already turn around and finish that correction off. That would be ideal if it doesn't play out that long. On the other hand, if we move up all the way, maybe even to 65k, and maybe even a little bit higher, that can take more time, obviously. And in the end, what you'll probably get here is a massive head and shoulders. That would then take us down into my target area eventually, yeah. So again, it took a little bit longer, but that original scenario that was the primary scenario has now become the primary scenario again after the this one here with an immediate breakout down did not happen. But what I'm convinced of is that we are going to see this target area nevertheless, just after this initial pump up before we come down. So this initial year-end rally that I expected end of 21 is, I think, happening now. Okay, back end of 21 we saw some cryptos do that year-end rally, but less than expected. So we saw Harmony One do it, we saw Phantom do it, I think Terra Luna as well. Yeah, so all of that played out for these, but for many, including Bitcoin, we saw the alternative scenario, and now we see this this wave B up and then the wave C down. That is primarily what I do expect to play out now. All right, very interesting at the moment on the Bitcoin chart in the crypto market in general. So hopefully you liked that update. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe. And if you really like the content, then check out the channel membership. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.